Hello, 6th grade. In this video, we'll be looking at least common multiples. If you remember in the last video, we talked about greatest common factors, so least common multiple is sort of the other end of that. The least common multiple, or LCM, of a group of numbers is the smallest multiple that is shared by all of the numbers in that set. And remember, multiple simply means a number that is divisible by the original number. So for example, every even number is a multiple of 2 because every even number is divisible by 2. One way we can find the LCM of 2 or more numbers is to list all of the multiples of each number. And once we do that, the LCM is going to be the smallest value that appears in all the lists. So we're going to try that here in example 1. It asks us to find the LCM of 4, 6, and 12. And to create a list of numbers, I just have to be really good at counting and skipping my numbers. So the multiples of 4 are going to be all the numbers that are divisible by 4. So that starts with 4, and then the next number would be 8. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 7 is 28. 4 times 8 is 32. Okay, we're going to stop there. We may have to keep going depending on what numbers appear in our other lists. Now we'll list the multiples of 6. So we always start with the original number 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 6 is 36. And we'll stop there. 12. The multiples of 12 are 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. 12 times 4 is 48. Okay, so these lists already you can see share some common multiples. The least common multiple, or the smallest number that each list shares, is in fact 12. 12 appears in our multiples of 4, our multiples of 6, and our multiples of 12. And so the LCM of these three numbers is 12. Now, creating a list is not always the best way. For small numbers, it works, okay, and it's a pretty quick method. But let's say I asked you to find the LCM of 78 and 110. Well, in order to find the LCM using this list method up here that we tried, you would have to list the first 55 multiples of 78 and the first 39 multiples of 110 before you would even find a match. So you would have some very, very long lists if all you did was list multiples of the numbers you were given. And so that's why we have a better method for finding LCMs, and that is called prime factorization, which you already know how to do. So let's try 78 and 110. Okay, instead of writing out the multiples of 78 and the multiples of 110, I'm going to look at the prime factorization of each of these numbers. So starting with 78, I'm going to make my factor tree here. 78 I know is divisible by 6 because it's divisible by 2 and 3, so I could make this a 6, and it goes into 78 13 times. 13 is prime, but 6 I can branch out into 2 times 3. So the prime factorization of 78 is 2 times 3 times 13. Okay, now we'll do the prime factorization of 110. So 110 I know is divisible by 10 because it ends in a 0, and 10 times 11 gives me 110. 11 is prime. 10 I can split up into 2 and 5, which are both prime, so the prime factorization of 110 is 2 times 5 times 11. Okay, so if you remember, to find the GCFs of numbers after we did the prime factorization, we had to look for what common factors they shared. Well, we're going to do the same thing for LCMs, but there's a little bit more to it than that. But I'm going to start by finding what factors do the prime factorization list share. Well, I see they both share a 2, so I'm going to circle the 2 here in this list and here in this list, and that's going to start my LCM. So my LCM is going to start with a 2. They don't share any other factors, okay? So there are no more common factors. So if I were asking you what the GCF is of 78 and 110, well, the GCF would be 2. But the LCM is always going to be the common factor, or the GCF, times all of the unshared factors. So the unshared factors are the ones we have encircled. So that would be 3, 13, 5, and 11. So we're going to multiply all of those unshared factors by the one common factor, which is 2, and that's going to give us our LCM. So we need to do a little bit of multiplication here. So I'm going to split this up into pairs. I'm going to do 2 times 3, which is 6. 13 I'm going to bring down for a moment, and then I'm going to do 5 times 11, which is 55. Remember, multiplication you can multiply in any order if it's all multiplication. Okay, so that's why I'm allowed to bring the 13 down and do the last two numbers here, 5 times 11. 6 times 13, okay, 6 times 13 is going to give me 78. And so the LCM of 78 and 110 is really going to be the product of 78 and 55, which I'll need to show some work for. I'm going to do that over here. So it's a really large number, the LCM of 78 and 110, but when we multiply that 78 times 55 at the end, we end up getting 4,290. And 4,290 is in fact the least common multiple of 78 and 110. Again, this is another reason why we don't make the lists of 78 and 110, because that would take a really, really long time to figure out what the multiples are of each of those numbers, and then even longer to find what the common multiple is. Okay, we're going to try this one more time on the back side, this time with 3 numbers. We have 9, 27, and 45. So again, we're going to start by listing the prime factorizations of each of those numbers. So starting with 9, I know 9's prime factorization is pretty simple. It's 3 times 3. 27, well, 27 I can split up into 3 times 9, and then the 9 again is 3 times 3. So 27's prime factorization is 3 times 3 times 3. And then 45, well, 45 is 5 times 9. And again, 9's 3 times 3, so this becomes 3 times 3 times 5. So again, the LCM is found by first circling the shared factors. Each list shares a 3. So I'm going to bring one single 3 down to my LCM. Each list shares another 3. So now I have a second 3 in my LCM. If I were asking again the GCF, this would be the GCF, 3 times 3, which is 9. But the LCM means you have to take all of the unshared factors as well. So I don't have any more factors here on my 9. We used both 3's here. For the 27, I have one unused 3. So I'm going to bring that down. And for the 45, I have one unused 5. So that's coming down. So my least common multiple is going to be 3 times 3 times 3 times 5. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. And 3 times 5 is 15. So now I just need to multiply 15 times 9. And 15 times 9 is 135. So the LCM of 9, 27, and 45 is 135. As always, 6th grade, if you have any questions over what you saw in this video, be sure you write those down so that you can ask your teacher the next time we see you in class. Until then, have a nice day. You're all wonderful people.